the Stonecrest Podcast.
Spreading awareness within our community.
Hey neighbors, welcome back to another episode of the Stonecrest Podcast. And as promised, we are bringing you the candidates for DeKalb County CEO. And today we have the only lady that is in the running, and we're super excited to share and introduce to some. We better not be introducing her to anyone, but some of you guys need this introduction. We have Commissioner Lorraine Cochran-Johnson. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, and thank you for having me. When it comes to women, all we need is one good woman.
That's true. That's true. One good woman with iconic glasses and fashionable style, right? Someone we could identify with, right? So, that's where the fashion
That's
girl
what we
is.
women do.
Yes, but it's beyond fashion. So can you tell us a bit more about yourself?
As you said, I am Lorraine Cochran-Johnson. I am a current sitting commissioner in DeKalb County, Georgia, with 5 years in, and I am a candidate now for DeKalb County CEO. I was raised in LA. I'm from Lower Alabama. I have done a tour of college and higher educational institutions. So Auburn University, Troy University, John Marshall Law School, certificate from Harvard University. I love knowledge. I think it's a very empowering facet of life. And I love people. I love community. So very proud to represent people. And I often say that I simply want our communities to look like who we are. Educated, dignified, respectable, hardworking people.
I like all of that. You saw my face. When you said LA, I was like, oh my goodness.
The Southern drawl didn't go with.
But I was gonna take it however it came. Because whenever, me being this lonely transplant to Georgia, I'm always looking for folks from my hometown. I'm from California. So you said LA and
You perked up, I noticed.
I did. My heart was like, where? But then you said Lower Alabama.
2 LAs.
It's 2. Now I know. I'm not sure if it's lower. I think it's kind of middle Alabama. My family's from the Mobile County area.
Oh, no, that's LA. That's Lower Alabama.
That is? Well, then,
it is the Bay Area.
I'm from LA twice.
Yes.
Hello.
South Alabama.
So all my family, my aunt has a house. We call it down the bay, and we go down there every Mardi Gras because she's just walking distance from the fair line and the parade line. So so Alabama's a thing. Gulf shrimp, nothing like it. Crafting. Okay, sorry guys, I'm going down a tangent.
Digress.
Especially when we talk about
when you talk about
or home.
Yes, and home.
All those things. So we're going to get into it because I will actually spend time just wanting to have girl talk with you, which is not what we're here for. We want to make sure that we're giving all of our neighbors the opportunity to get to know you better since they have the chance to vote for you. So I have this one exciting question that throughout my career, I've asked multiple people from the age of 21 all the way. I think the oldest person I've ever asked this question was 72.
Okay.
So I would like to know, what is one thing that you would do if you could not fail?
Interestingly, it would not be associated with government or politics. If there was one thing that I could do and would not fail, it would be to journey back in time.
Wow. I have not heard this.
It
Please
would be
explain.
to journey back in time. I would take that time capsule or whatever and go back, because I would love to sit and have a conversation with my father and my mother. They were both huge civil activists in Alabama.
Wow.
And I now understand what I didn't then.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up Southern Baptist, as all good folks should do. And I can remember everything in my life centered around the church.
Mm-hmm.
So as a little girl, I would be there with my grandfather, and, they would have heated conversations. And I can remember passing out all the material. And I now understand that was the slate.
Mm-hmm.
So my granddad always talked about community and people and race matters.
Yes.
And I didn't understand So I'd love to sit with him today and say, I do.
You know, that might have been the most heartfelt turn on the answering that question that I've ever experienced. Because there's always been people who make me feel terrible. So like, I would end world hunger. And I'm like, oh man, I'm selfish. But
I would simply want to sit with my grandfather and mother. I can remember when she would carry people to the polls, and I would be there all day as voting took place. And I wanted to go home.
Yeah.
Because as a child, that's not the ideal location.
No.
And now I understand how important some of the activities that I grew up doing were. Mm-hmm. And I just want to go back and now have the conversation, because it's so unfortunate that even today we deal with the issues of then.
Yes, absolutely. And ignorantly so.
Ignorantly so, absolutely.
So, oh my goodness. All right. So I'm not going to get here because I kind of want to cry, and I'm a professional. All right.
So do I, because when I think about it, it does make one emotional, because when you're younger, you think as a child and you act as a child.
Absolutely.
But, biblically, when you become a man or a woman, you put certain things aside. So now I just want to circle back and say thank you.
And I want to say thank you, because I believe that God puts us in a position to hear that. And I'm saying thank you to your ancestors and the legacy that led you here, because train up a child in the way that they should go, and they will not depart from it, because look at where you are now, right? Even though you want to have those conversations, look at the road that you have chosen. So I think we've been pretty vulnerable. And I think that vulnerability also translates into transparency. So I would like to ask you, if you were to make it as CEO of DeKalb County, how would you maintain and establish transparency and promote it from the top down?
Let me say that I entered politics in 2019, and I did not understand at the time why people did not trust me so. And after being present and speaking with so many community members, there are a lot of people who do not feel that government works for them.
Absolutely.
Or is responsive. So after being present, I began to understand more. And when we talk about transparency, I think sometimes we forget that government is by the people for the people. And when it comes to politicians, and I want to be very clear, there is a difference between a politician and an elected official.
I believe I heard you say this before.
Mm-hmm. I'm an elected official, so often I correct people because I never want to wear or own the wrong title. And when it comes to government, we should be transparent on everything we do. So sitting where I sit now, one of the first things that I plan to institute as the next CEO is greater technology and access to information. All of our documents should be easily available online. Also, I want to require all of our departments to have available their SOPs, their standard operating procedures. I believe that it's really important for people to understand what you do. Sometimes education, when it comes to government, is sorely lacking because people believe in the absence of being told, systems work in a certain way when they may not.
Absolutely.
So sometimes getting rid of ambiguity in education is the key, but always being available, always having those phones answered, always having access to information, and also in the spirit of transparency, expanding technology to include real-time access to meetings so that constituents receive a text message and they are free to just click and join us at any time. Be a part of the meeting.
You're speaking the language of the residents of Stonecrest, right?
Yes, be a part.
Because many of the people in Stonecrest are fighting just for 3 minutes of talk time. So the idea of having real-time opportunities and text communication. Okay, I see you're not playing fair. I see you.
No, because at the end of the day, it's really important to me too, that no one in DeKalb County can plead ignorance. I want to give you every opportunity to have a seat at the table so that we don't have miscommunications, there's no misunderstanding. And also, I want people to be a part of the decision-making process. And currently, so few people know what we do. It's only during SPLOST, our special purpose local option sales tax, that we really get out there. And that's because we have to engage you because there's a referendum. We need the vote. But I want to treat every day like we need the vote.
Now, let me get back because this is the Stonecrest Podcast. We are a partial and unbiased platform. Do not take the chills that just ran down my back as an endorsement, even though I really like what you just said. All right. So moving on to the next one. I want to talk because you've been in the role for 5 years.
Yes.
As commissioner, and you actually are my commissioner.
I am.
Just so happens to be that way. So it's kind of like exciting to be able to talk to someone who is making decisions on my behalf. So with that being said, can you talk about a time that you have implemented a change that was requested by your constituents?
Yes. This one is really easy. In 2018 is when I was on the campaign trail, and I attended a forum at First African Church, actually here in Stonecrest.
Stonecrest? Okay.
Yes. And at that time, of course, we were all there and, it was all new for me. But there was a woman who approached me following the forum, and she said, I don't know you, but I like you. But liking you is not enough to give you support. She said, I want you to tell me that you understand Family Dollar, Dollar Tree, and Dollar General in Black, brown, and underserved communities is not economic development, and I will support you. And I stood there because honestly, I see the dollar stores, but I had never given them much thought. And I did not lie. I can remember being very honest with her and saying that, honestly, I've not researched the effect that they have on community, but I promise you I will. And she said, okay, at least you're honest. I'll vote for you. So I can remember going home that night and Googling the effects of dollar stores on community. And when I did, there was an entire litany of information on the effects that they have on Black and brown communities, that they tend to create food deserts.
Yes.
There's also a developmental pattern where individuals that or communities, I should say, where they exist, generally have a lower to income sensitive communities with generally about a 40,000 median household income. And immediately I connected with the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. I reached out to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and this was before I was even elected. And I began to work with them. So less than 30 days into office, in January of 2019, I walked into the law department with an absolute stack of materials asking for a moratorium on the issuance of LDPs, land disturbance permits, and business licenses for dollar stores. So fast forward 3 years later, a year later almost, and that research landed me on CBS Sunday Morning. As a result, I've been featured in the New York Times.
Wow.
And people across the United States see me as the authority because we were successfully able to craft a boxed store ordinance. And I repeat, boxed store ordinance that has all of the characteristics of the dollar stores. Because with a deep dive, you realize they don't operate more than 10,000 square feet. They're very lean in staffing. There are certain types of materials. So we went about that the right way. So I'm very happy to say that since my moratorium, there has not been a single LDP or business license issued in DeKalb County for a dollar store. since 2020.
Look at God. Because when you think about it, those dollar stores they are called dollar stores, like Family Dollar, Dollar General, but the pricing really is not less. It is significantly higher to buy the same products that if you just drove down to the Kroger that you would get in access and convenience, the walking distance in the middle.
And believe it or not, the quantities are different with those products as well.
Absolutely.
So, with the legislation that I passed, if you now visit a dollar store in DeKalb County, you will see that freezers have gone in. They are now selling milk. They're now selling frozen fruits and vegetables, as well as cheeses and a variety of other products, because there was an opportunity there to do good. Because in many communities where they exist, there is a need for access to certain types of food products, but requiring those healthy options were what was really important. And I will say to those who are watching, I found that in government, people lie and numbers don't. So get your facts together.
Amen.
Okay,
Amen.
Because when we pull the data in District 1, which was at the time Commissioner Jeff Rader, there was $1 store. In District 2, which was Commissioner Nancy Jester at the time, there were $2 stores. District 3 was Commissioner Larry Johnson. There were $27 stores.
What a difference.
District 4, which was Commissioner Steve Bradshaw, there was $23 stores. And where we sit now, which is District 5, Commissioner Marita Davis Johnson, there were 17. So you could clearly see the pattern. So we were successful because I understand business. I come from corporate America, and I'm a grant writer by trade. I help people establish businesses. So their development model was like nothing I'd ever seen. So by having a mandatory distance requirement, we stopped the proliferation of those stores in our communities.
Look, and you can feel the difference. You can feel the difference, even though there's not enough, white cloth steak houses for my
We're
taste.
going to get there.
Yeah. But overall, if I think of DeKalb County as a whole, I think that the options from the time that I became a DeKalb resident, which has now been only since 2017, that I have seen so many local opportunities. If I think of the breadth of DeKalb, not just Stonecrest, there's been a lot more options and unique opportunities for dining and experiences in DeKalb within that time. And thinking of the time of your election and new people coming into office, I can see the difference for sure.
Absolutely.
Absolute. So I love that because it matters to Stonecrest. And I think that is something that the community has talked a lot about, which is dollar stores as well as gas stations. So seeing how that happened and you making the distance. Do you guys understand being in the New York Times is a big deal? Okay. It doesn't even
really
matter.
was. I was absolutely floored by that.
It might be why I see more people wearing your style of glasses, because now you've got national recognition. I'm like, wow, I see these glasses more frequently than I did previously. They're taking your style.
Well, listen, this is something that I don't talk about because I generally keep government and personal very separate.
Yes.
But I design eyewear.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm in 3 countries.
Oh, wow.
And 11 optic boutiques across the United States. So let me say, independent of these glasses, there may be no me. And I say that because, public service and government isn't the highest paying. It is certainly the most rewarding, but I've always tinkered in some form of business, and I turned a need, because when you reach a certain age, just hold on, Angel. There, you're going to show up and they'll say, "Oh, you need bifocals." And they
I wear them now. I wear them now. I try not to wear them as often as possible. Then there's those days that your eyes just don't agree and you must put them on.
So many people, and I remember at my oath of office, and when I ran for office, my guys that handle my digital back end, they reached out and said, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" They said, "All of these people are searching Lorraine Cochran-Johnson eyeglasses." And I said, "I'm running for office." So, funny story here. They put my candidacy into the back end of my analytics, and I sold enough glasses to fund my campaign, although on my first run, because I was running against an incumbent, I didn't have a lot of campaign contributions initially, because often it's not popular to support a new person who's running against an incumbent.
True.
So my eyeglasses fill the buffer.
That is a unique story.
It was so funny to see all these women in the audience at my oath of office with my glasses. It was like a sisterhood.
Absolutely. Almost like Kamala Harris with, the chucks and pearls.
Yes.
It's what's going to happen at the CEO thing. Well, I'm going to see what's happening. I'm going to take note of how many pairs of glasses we see. All right. So you're becoming CEO. Right. And
That's
so
right.
you would need to maintain and build professional relationships and maintain integrity amongst them as well. So what would be your method of making sure that you are building beneficial professional relationships with other chief executives?
Let me say that the first thing that I would do, and have already been doing, upon being elected, I am one of 2 super district commissioners currently. And for those of you who are watching, because I like to educate, technically DeKalb County has 7 commissioners. 5 are general, having about 50,000 constituents, while 2 are super districts, having half the county. So for me, I already represent Dunwoody, Doraville, Tucker, Stone Mountain, Stonecrest, Ellenwood, unincorporated DeKalb, Lithonia, and Pine Lake.
Okay.
So immediately I brought all of our sitting mayors together for our cities, because it's really important that we have conversations so that we're working together. Because with our municipalities, and DeKalb has 12 for the record, they have their own charter and their own vision, but we're still one DeKalb.
Absolutely.
Also from a regional perspective, DeKalb is the 4th largest county in the state of Georgia. The city of Atlanta is very important. Of course, we work with them with MARTA. Cobb is very important from a regional perspective. Also, Gwinnett. We have to work together. And I don't want to leave out many of our cities that are seeing huge growth at this time. Rockdale, Newton County, Henry, and Clayton. Huge. So we have to work together. And I really believe that it's important that, we have more of a consortium to share, because we are regional partners. We are. So I look forward to having those conversations, even now with the build out of the police training facility, partnership, conversation, because we are, of course, working very closely with the city of Atlanta. So oftentimes I look forward to having more projects where we can come together to work on them, as opposed to being apart, especially when it benefits both.
Oh, that makes so much sense. And thank you for helping educate everyone, because I'm sure they were kind of confused when I was like, oh, and she's my commissioner. And then you were like, yeah, and we're sitting in District 5 with Marita Johnson. I'm like, they're like, probably like, how is that possible? You just said that Lorraine was. So now we have the opportunity, and I'm not trying to get too familiar by calling her by her first name, but
it's fine. That's who I've always been.
I like that. It's who I've
always been. I've always been Lorraine. I may not always be a commissioner. I may not always have a title, but I will always be Lorraine. And I don't want a title to ever change me.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. Okay. So we're talking about titles, which is probably about to change.
We look forward to that change.
Since I could play on it. With votes.
With the vote.
You have to get out of vote, Stonecrest. We were just talking about that the other day, the apathetic you. So we're hoping that you could change that, and that you feel that these conversations inspire you to go vote in the no, and hashtag don't vote blind. So we're hoping that you put that underneath this episode. But back to the conversation at hand. So we just talked about the different municipalities of DeKalb, and we talked about our partners and everyone having unique visions, but based on DeKalb County structure, right? So if you think about how we're currently structured, what are things that you would keep the same, and what are some other elements that you would look towards strengthening?
Okay. Let me say first to those that are watching, because I am a former professor too. So I always like to make sure I bring people along with me in whatever I do or whatever I say. Currently, DeKalb County, out of 159 counties in the state of Georgia, we are the only form of CEO government. And I embrace that. I think it's less about the type of government than what we produce. And productivity is a direct reflection of those who represent you. So I want people to understand the importance of capacity when you show up at the polls. Currently, the one thing that I would change immediately, in some instances, is restructuring of departments in DeKalb County. I do believe that we need to take a careful look at what we have, because organizational structure is key to good government. Organizational structure is key to good organizations, period, whether it is for-profit, whether it is corporate entities. And for me, I want to take a careful look at all of the current roles and responsibilities of all of our departments, because some of them need restructuring. I'll give you one example, and that is code compliance. Currently in DeKalb County, code compliance is responsive. It also currently falls under sanitation. I believe that code compliance should be proactive.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, we will always respond to issues that are brought to us. Code compliance issues, just to give you a few that are always top of mind: high weeds and grass. When people don't cut their grass,
Amen.
That leads to code compliance. Open storage of trash is also an issue. Parking cars on grass is a no-no in DeKalb County, Georgia. So those are some of your most frequent infractions for which we have to cite. And I do believe that also placing that division under the police department, because ultimately when there is a failure to comply, because you're given so many days to remediate the condition, the next thing we issue you is a citation. So I believe it's a function of the courts as opposed to a function of sanitation, because many of the issues that we deal with in code compliance have nothing at all to do with sanitation. Of course, removal of high grass and weeds, that is more beautification. But beyond that, heat, water, all of chipping paint is considered a code violation. Infestation of rodents, which of course, with those types of issues, we have to work alongside our health department, public health. So that is just one example of me going in and restructuring to increase efficiency and ensure that we have better operations.
I love how you explained that. And I must admit, with the distractive pettiness of my spirit, I couldn't get over rodent infestations.
Yes.
And the idea that there are plenty to complain about. I had a really sad story. I won't say the name of the restaurant in case someone is eating there now, but there was a Caribbean restaurant in DeKalb County that we went to visit. And I was so proud to bring my family who came from overseas to this particular restaurant. And we were in line. A young lady before us, she turned around and she screamed bloody murder. I thought we were getting robbed. I was like, oh no, not violence while my family is here. And I'm telling about how great it is down here, and Southern people are so nice. But in the end, it was a gigantic rodent.
And those are things that we should know about. And I say that because it's sort of like that old saying, where there's smoke, there's fire.
Absolutely.
If there's one, there's probably more.
There's probably more. And when you think about that, like for us, it was like, just leave. You don't really think like you should report this place.
It should be reported.
You should report this place, because that is a really huge problem. And there were so many red flags.
It has health consequences. Rodent droppings, that changes dynamics. And especially in a food establishment.
Absolutely.
The consequences are even greater. So please, for those who are watching, when you see something, say something.
Absolutely.
Because that allows me to take action.
Right. Because I know a lot of us brown-skinned people were raised like snitches get stitches. But in the end, you want to help and love your neighbor. And sometimes speaking up and speaking out is truly loving your neighbor. That is
absolutely
a really high level way of saying that. But it just kind of stood out to me that we only say things when it's bothering us, not when it really matters and we want to consider that this actually could impact our neighbors in love. And then you talked about moving this underneath the police department.
Yes.
Us in Stonecrest, you know that we partner with DeKalb to service us from a public safety standpoint. And many of the people in the community feel that we're underserved. And then so when we think about moving something like code enforcement under the police department, that is, I'm going to say fledgling, many people would say, because there's not enough staff. It actually gives me a little bit of angst. Like, oh man, we definitely aren't going to get more cars now because they're going to also be responsible for this new responsibility. And I know you're a Stonecrest resident as well. Can you kind of like help ease our mind on how that would work?
Oh, absolutely. You gain the entire department and the department already has personnel. So it would function underneath the police department. However, currently in our code compliance division, I believe we may have approximately 60 or 70 individuals. So it's not assigning a responsibility to individuals that are already in the field to our police officers, but it would expand to Director Tim Hardy, a certain amount of policing powers.
Okay.
So that when they go on site to issue citations, it gives a great deal more authority. Because oftentimes, folks who, you have to make good neighbors out of some people. I'm very sorry to announce some people must be compelled to be a good neighbor. So having that policing power, I think, gives them more credibility.
I appreciate that. That was very insightful. It helped me along because I'm always worried about public safety because I feel...
And that's a big issue because it is sorely understaffed. And I have a plan there too.
Do you want to share it?
Absolutely. And I'm a numbers girl, for those of you who know me. Of course, according to the FBI statistics, and that is what we use, it's pretty much universally accepted. We should have 2.4 officers per 1,000, okay? Per 1,000 population. Currently in DeKalb County, we have 1 officer per 1,000.
Half.
So we're missing, actually more than half.
More than half, because of 1.4.
So I don't know how you get to a 0.4 person, but we're missing 1.4. And, for the past several years, we paid our officers triple overtime since COVID because many officers moved along during that time. And I believe that it's very important that we have in place ongoing COLAs, cost of living allowances for our officers. I believe that pay is very critical here. It is going to require an increase in pay. Currently, we tout the fact that DeKalb County is the highest paid regional. But when that study was done, we looked at places like Memphis and Charlotte. We looked at areas outside Metro Atlanta. And I want to be clear, we're competing with Metro Atlanta. And currently, when you look at the metro area, Sandy Springs, Brookhaven, Dunwoody have amongst our highest paid officers, and that's at around 70,000. Currently, we gave a raise and we're at 55. Now go do the math. Think through this carefully because unfortunately in 2020 and 2021, DeKalb County, unfortunately, was the homicide capital of the state. Now, we have now given that title back to the city of Atlanta, and I'm very proud that they have it. I don't want it. No one wants, and I want to also say on their behalf, no one wants that. But unfortunately, it's true. So for officers that are placing themselves in harm's way with knowledge that you work in an area that has high incidence of violent crimes, assaults, batteries, rapes, it's going to require more.
Right. $55,000 doesn't feel like it's worth my lifetime away from my family, regardless of triple overtime.
Absolutely. And I'm just being honest here. This is an honest conversation.
No, and I'm so happy. I'm so happy that we're talking about it. I remember I mentioned I'm from California. When I moved to Georgia and police officers were making $38,000, I was flabbergasted because coming from LA, I know the cost of living in California, everyone is taking that into consideration, but just the idea of someone every single day putting their life on the line, and you want them to commit, you want them to be honest, you want that amount of money doesn't breed that broadly. So,
and public safety, let me be very clear, affects economic development.
Absolutely.
It affects property values.
Absolutely.
It affects what you pay for your car insurance. Whether or not people realize it, public safety is important. And honestly, as an elected official, if you can't keep people safe, what are we really doing?
Right. Number one, look, you just kind of segue into the next thing I want to talk about. And I don't know if you've already said it because you might say something different, but thank you for talking about public safety in that manner, because I know this is a big deal for Stonecrest residents, especially when we think about economic development, which is another big concern for us, right? Because I believe that our community is somewhat of a food desert, right? Or the same types of foods are here. But for me, I kind of want to circle back. Well, what do you believe is the biggest problem in DeKalb County, and what are your plans to resolve that?
I would definitely say a combination of public safety and economic development. And believe it or not, for me, and I don't get to define what other people believe, but I believe the two are intrinsically linked. Because we often, as elected officials, we put a great deal of money into public safety, okay? But we never talk about the number one factor of crime is economics. Until we begin to address the least of those. And I will say that Teddy Kennedy got it right when he said that the greatest struggle of man is not how we move separately, but how we join and bring everyone along together. So care must be given to those who do not have access. We have to encourage education. And let me say I'm a major proponent for the trades, because there should be no child in the state of Georgia who does not go on to post-secondary education. We have 18 trades that are free of charge with a high school diploma. But I do not see us talk about that enough, okay? So in order to change economics, in order to better recruit industry, we need an educated labor force. So for me, a balance between the two of those in some of our communities, and sitting here in Stonecrest, let me say to those of you who are watching, the 30038 zip code is second only in African-American wealth to Prince George's County, Maryland. Now, of course, when the late, great Coretta Scott King passed away, and during that time, former President Bill Clinton came to the funeral, he pointed out things that obviously a lot of us didn't know. A lot of people don't realize the pocket of wealth that we sit on when we sit here. But when you look at Stonecrest and you look at what we have, we're not there. But economic development is a careful balance, because it's not just income, rooftops. And in development, we call that word critical mass. So if you call any retailer, whether it's a restaurant, whatever
Whole
you're looking
Foods,
at,
right.
your Whole Foods, and you say, I am interested in bringing a Whole Foods to Stonecrest, there's three things that they need to know. First, what is the location you're considering? Then after receiving that location, they concern themselves with a 1/4-mile radius, the amount of homes, and the AMI, the area median income of those homes. And they will immediately tell you if they're coming. So contrary to the coonery and such that I've heard from other people and some elected officials even that say, oh, we're going to crowdfund a supermarket. That doesn't happen. We've got to do better in rooftops and educating people, because sometimes we deal with folks saying, oh, I don't want it. And I don't want you to have anything you don't want. But it's time we stop saying no, but say yes to the right thing. And it's time for us to have elected officials who understand how to guide the ship to create housing that we desire, so that you have an increase in property values for all. It enhances community, and it gets us closer to having the demographics that we need to recruit the industry that we desire.
Mic drop. So we're just going to go ahead and piggyback onto the next topic, because what else is there to be said? Because you made that very clear.
I want what you want, but we've got to have someone who can get us there. And that starts now. That starts on May 21st when you go to the polls and vote for me.
Ooh, and I like how you did that. We see you.
It's true.
So you've been in the role since 2019. What is the most difficult? Well, I'm going to go ahead, and you've been in multiple roles throughout your career, right? Being the county commissioner is the most recent. So if I'm going to think of the breadth of your career, what is the most difficult decision you've had to make so far?
I would say, honestly, the most difficult decision I've had to make was to run for CEO. I will say that in 2018, when I started this journey, I have never had the luxury of a mentor in politics and government. So I was naive.
Yes.
I had a desire, and I went down there, and I was so naive. I wrote my personal cell phone number. I wrote my address, because there was no one to tell me, get a post office box. There was no coaching. And today I now understand the magnitude of the need of people.
Yes.
In a different way. So for me to do this.
I understand. And I'm going to ask if you feel like sharing what you had to sacrifice to choose to run, which is different than other candidates have had to choose to do. If you don't mind talking a little bit about what you've had to sacrifice, because I think that's a little unique compared to maybe some of your opponents, what you've had to give up to choose to run.
Absolutely. Let me say that out of my opponents, I have the youngest children. I would also say that I'm the only grandmother. Imagine that. I'm a grandmother that's in this race. And also coming from, a corporate background, one doesn't generally get 3 degrees, attend law school, a Harvard certificate, and probably end up in public service. So, the corporate dollars look good. But I found myself here. And in all honesty, I was so naive. I go back to that word when I entered the race, that if you read the Org Act, and this is also a problem for me, it indicates that being a commissioner is a part-time job. There is nothing part-time about what I do. And I believe it should be adjusted. Because in all honesty, people need a full-time commissioner. You need full-time leadership. There would be no way I could have achieved the things that I had independent of working full-time and overtime. So I believe we need work there. So oftentimes you're out late because people just know what they want. They don't know what you've been through or what your day was like. Even sitting here with you today, I have a total of 5 events. Mr. Pimpton didn't realize I had committed to another. So I have a total of 5. And, that's a sacrifice because you're not home. You're not with the children. You didn't cook. And this, I will say, is a Saturday. So where most people have a 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, Saturdays and Sundays is where you get crunk in government.
Yes.
So those are just some of the things. And you sacrifice a lot of yourself. So one has to learn how to balance. And to be honest, I have really come to believe that if service really isn't in your heart the right way, that is, if God has you and your vision is clear, then you can sustain yourself.
Amen. I can agree 100% because just in general, all these things are a leap of faith. Even what we're doing is small compared to what you're doing. But anytime
It's
you're
all
sacrificing,
important.
putting
It's no
yourself
smaller.
to the public, right? It is always, and some people may not realize how frightening it is because some people are crazy as well. It's just so much exposing yourself to criticism, to people believing that they know you more intimately than they do. All of those pieces I understand. And then you are not finishing out your term, right? So then there's open to criticism of people. Well, why would you choose to give up when we voted for you to do this? And now you're trying to achieve something. Or are we not worthy? Like everyone has something to say. And so thank you for your bravery in making the decision to do what you believe is best and how you can best contribute and serve our community. We're going to move on because I think that you've mentioned in multiple ways, but not directly, how do you believe that you are best qualified to be CEO of DeKalb?
I truly know that I'm best to be the next CEO because I bring with me, and I do believe that in this race, I'm the only commissioner who has already run multi-million-dollar corporations as a general manager. So I'm not new to this in many ways. I have an extensive background in organizational structure, and my certificate from Harvard is in efficiency. I know how to create environments that produce. I believe, government is interesting because, believe it or not, to run for CEO of DeKalb County at this moment, there's only 2 requirements. And that's that you are 35 years of age and that you are a 5-year resident. So I want you to think about an individual who's 35, 5-year resident, but you're assuming the responsibility of a $4.8 billion budget. Okay? There's some job skills that ought to come along with it. And if you go further down our org act, you will see the first position that the CEO has to choose is what's called the executive assistant. But with the changing of the charter, that executive assistant is now defined as the chief operating officer. But the chief operating officer is required to have a 4-year degree, 10 years of experience in their field with a master's preferred. Where is it that you find those that are under the guidance of the CEO would have more experience than him or her? Should I expand more?
It feels awfully backwards, right? It feels awfully backwards. And I think that you definitely just enlighten multiple people on that and understanding the importance of getting out and voting on May 21st or early voting. Please make sure you're registered to vote because that is frightening.
Yeah, and it takes more than a desire to be in a position. One word that I've come to embrace in government is capacity.
Yes.
One must have the capacity to produce. And I have all of my life, when you're in corporate America, you are brought there because of your skill set, what you bring to the table, and the door is open and you take your seat. In government, I have found the door to be shut for the same reasons. Because we're not all the same.
Yes.
And sometimes for those who may be around you, the fear of your knowledge is not welcome. So I really want us to be very critical in making choices on who represents us because it matters. Communities are a direct reflection of those who represent you.
Absolutely.
If it doesn't look right, you probably need to look at who's running it. Doesn't mean they're not great people. It just means that we need people who have greater capacity, who've been at the table and understand how to go about building what we desire and what we need.
Absolutely. And I kind of think that you, again, probably spoken a bit to your philosophy, right? So we know that you think you're the best, but what would be your philosophy? Or some people might even try to narrow it down to somewhat of a mantra, but we don't need that for sure. But what would be your philosophy for running the county?
I would say if I had to have a philosophy, it would be what I have coined the 3 C's. I recently wrote a book.
Congrats.
And my 3 C's are care, conviction, and capacity. So those are my mantra. C3, care, conviction, and capacity. Because what I've found in organizations is that when people care, it makes them convicted. And every person that I've ever seen who achieved great things, they had capacity to do so. So when you put those three things together, even when you transfer them, because I do believe that these are transferable skills.
Absolutely.
I talk about it in my book, and that comes with empowering people. We have to understand people who are around us. What is your capacity? What do you enjoy? What is your empirical knowledge? And when those things combine, that's when you get results.
3 C's or C3? Which one is it?
I like both. I like both. C3, 3 C's, interchangeable.
It's going to be like, vote for Cochran-Johnson, C3. Absolutely. We're coming to the end of the questions I want to ask you. So the final question I really want to bring in is there's trends, right? They always say there's nothing new under the sun, and life is cycles. Like the other day, bell bottoms are back again in the stores, right? So what do you see as the trend for our county? And where do you see us in the next year, 5 years, 20 years for DeKalb?
That's interesting that you would say trends, because as soon as you said that, I had the pleasure when I moved here of being the assistant for a very brief time for Hosea Williams.
Oh, wow.
I just thought he was the closest thing to my grandfather I'd ever seen. So I would roll around with him and listen to him all day. And he used to always say that he who knows not his history is destined to repeat it. Now, I don't know if that began with him, but he's the first person I heard say it, and it always stuck with me.
Yeah.
Because when you look at history, it's I love history. It's really important. But let me say to you that when I think about DeKalb, if I were sitting here today and if I were a pastor, I would deliver a prosperity gospel sermon, because I feel that we are at a crossroad. And the key to where we are is the fact that we control our outcome.
Amen.
It's time we just simply get things right. Our trajectory looks like the future of the person who you elect, because they are going to be charged with some critical issues in 2025. We're looking at high capacity transit. A lot of people don't understand how important it is. Whether we're choosing, I've heard arguments for heavy rail, light rail. Of course, we have BRT, bus rapid transit. But sitting in Stonecrest, we do not have high capacity transit that comes here. And it isn't rocket science. And that's why I want to do a lot of educating of people, because sometimes if you follow the numbers, it will tell you what needs to be done. So I look forward to following the numbers and educating people so we get on one accord and we kick that can down the road. Because I think many, many years ago, over 40 years ago, when MARTA, formed, DeKalb was one of the initial players at the table. But of course, there was opposition to moving rail to the south. Because during that time, people thought, it's going to bring the undesirables to our great community. Well, now we see the problematic side of that theory.
Yes.
Because we have not experienced transit-oriented development as you see in other jurisdictions because of the access to high-capacity transit. We got to move people along. Also, when you look at the numbers, I'm very happy. Many of you may see that we're getting our own Spaghetti Junction down here on the east side. Okay. Yes, which is long overdue, and it's all based on projections for the future, the traffic numbers.
Yeah.
So in some ways we're building, but transportation is going to be critical as we grow. When we talk about economic development, we're getting there, but we have to be more strategic, and half of that goes back to that critical mass, that term that I use that is associated with housing. And currently here in DeKalb County, we have over 60,000 people. And I repeat, 60,000 people who are awaiting affordable housing. But when you look at our development patterns, technically DeKalb County has lagged behind other jurisdictions on the development of affordable housing. As your CEO, I will create a Chief Housing Officer, a CHO. Their only responsibility will be to get out there and foster relationships that result in development of housing to meet the needs that we have failed to achieve over the past several years to fill the gap. So we have to be strategic. Mm-hmm. So with the right planning, another thing it's time we have is a central annex for the DeKalb County government. Right now, we're all over the place. So who we become is going to directly be a result of who we choose to lead us.
So we want to say thank you so much for being here, but we're not done. We have one last thing that we want to ask you, and that is to talk to us about your campaign specifically. So can you share with our neighbors and friends about the campaign for Commissioner Lorraine Cochran-Johnson moving into DeKalb County CEO?
Let me say to everyone that is watching us here today, I want to rephrase the statement because I don't want a campaign. I want a movement. I feel that, in campaigns, traditional campaigns, you're out there, but I believe that in DeKalb County at this point, we need a movement. One of the individuals that I admire most and speak with for wise counsel is Ambassador Andrew Young. And I can remember speaking with Ambassador Young, and we were talking about politics and my future. And he said, Lorraine, it's harder to build a movement than a monument. And I want people in this race to be really convicted, because if you see what I see, if you understand where we are at a crossroad. And the decisions we make today will have lasting effects on not only our lives, but those of our children and those who come after us. At this moment in DeKalb County, we need a CEO who has the capacity to achieve the goals of the people. It's time that we lay a foundation that will carry us not just 10 years, but 25 years into the future. As a member of the governing authority of DeKalb County, as your commissioner, I have allocated the highest dollar amount of a sitting committee chair in the history of DeKalb County by allocating over $1.4 billion in infrastructure funds as a result of our consent decree and the need to progressively move us forward with our infrastructure. I will acknowledge that that allocation has been done without scandal or reprimand. As your commissioner, I brought home honors that we've never had before. I'm your 2023 American Public Works Elected Official of the Year. In 30 years, we've not seen that honor. I am willing, and I have done the work. I'm also your commissioner, understanding that the number one location for violent crimes in DeKalb County is unfortunately at our gas and service stations. So to address the issue, I created our video surveillance system legislation that now requires all gas and service stations to have 24-hour mandatory video surveillance. We are now regulating the type of equipment that's used so that that footage becomes a tool that can be used to help us in DeKalb apprehend people who choose to break laws. When you said we need to address the presence of dollar stores to stop food deserts and the proliferation, I'm the commissioner who created a box store ordinance that's now used in 9 different states. I have an entire history of productivity. And as your CEO, I will make you proud. I promise that I'll work hard for us, and I will create a community within a short period of time, that reflects who we are. It will not be easy, but I have a PhD in people. So you can expect that I will bring the best team to DeKalb County that you have ever seen. And I want you all to know that as your CEO, our best days are ahead of us. So I urge you to view each candidate carefully and to get out there and vote, because the future is at hand. So I thank you for the opportunity to have served. It has been the highlight of my life. And I look forward to becoming your next CEO so that I can carry us to the heights that I know are possible with good leadership.
I want to say thank you so very much for spending time with us today. It has been amazing. The conversation has been uplifting, and it was everything that we needed it to be. So neighbors, May 21st, go and vote. Oh, Commissioner Cochran-Johnson, you did not tell us where to find you. So your website, your social media.
Yes. You can join me. Since entering the race, I've always been Lorraine for Change. So all of my social media, whether it be Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, is #Lorraine for Change. Or to get quick information on my platform and my vision, please visit my website. It is LorraineForChange.com. So find me anywhere across social media, just with the hashtag or the name Lorraine for Change.
Oh, you made it easy. Is that FOR, the number 4?
It is FOR.
Awesome. Well, we thank you so much. Make sure you go out and vote on May 21st. The CEO role matters to us. It is $1.4 billion at stake.
1.8 billion is just unincorporated, 4.8 total, including municipalities.
That's a lot of money, folks.
A lot of money.
Make sure you're trusting it in the right hands, like State Farm, good hands, or no, State Farm is the neighbor. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Allstate, you're in good hands.
You're in good hands.
We need all the things, all the hands, insurances, all the things. And thank you so much for sharing how you can be that protector and insurer for us in the county.
Thank you for having me. This has been a great conversation.
Absolutely. Hopefully we'll have you back.
Forward to it.
Awesome. Thank you. Until next time, don't vote blind. The Stonecrest Podcast.
Spreading awareness within our community.